Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome again to People Talk with Paul Lawrence. It's been a short week, and so I think it's fair to me to confess that because it was a short week, I didn't prepare a topic, and I'm just lucky or blessed, I don't know which one you want to choose, that the three people who have joined me today as my panel accepted my invite at relatively short notice. Fortunately, none of them are strangers, certainly not to me, and they shouldn't be strangers to yourselves. So, yeah, I sort of thought that if they didn't accept the invite, I'd have to out them publicly, but that was not necessary. Look, it's been a short week because of the bank holiday weekend, but I think more importantly that a lot of stuff has really happened, and so rather than decide upon one topic, which is what I normally do, is I thought it would be a good week for us just to sort of reflect on what the panelists want to talk about. Very typically, I create the topic, I invite people, but this week I thought, now let's do it slightly differently. Let's see what they want to talk about. And I asked them all to think about two or three things that they wanted to talk about. And I've seen some of the stuff that I know some people want to talk about. And you know what, as life would have it, some of it converges anyway. So it's not very dissimilar. But as usual, I'm going to ask my guests to introduce themselves. The normal format is the person who comes on first, introduce themselves first. But we're going to scrap that today. We're scrapping a lot of stuff today because we have, probably for the first time, we have more gentlemen on the panel. So I'm going to ask the lady to introduce herself first, and then I'll go to the gentleman. So unmute yourself, please, and introduce yourself.
Hello, good afternoon or good morning, good evening, depending on where in the world you are. My name is Marilyn Devonish. It's always challenging to say what I do, so it's normally contextual. But what I will just say in a nutshell is I'm a coach and I'm a therapist. I have an interest in how the mind and the brain works. I have an interest in emotional health and well-being for reasons which may or may not become apparent as we speak today. And I guess one of the things that I will say as an opening to this is it's always lovely to be invited to things like this, because if you'd met me 20 years ago today, I was still terrified of public speaking and did not have a voice. And so now that I have, I always like to use it. So I very much look forward to seeing where this conversation goes today. And thank you, Paul, for the invitation.
Now, you're absolutely welcome. Your hidden fan club, I'm not sure you're aware of, would have butchered me if I had an opportunity to invite you, and I didn't do so. For those of you who don't understand the context of that, so a couple of weeks ago, we did a show on relationships. Marilyn joined what I like to call the after party. Yep. So after all of these Zooms, we have like an after party where people can join in, and Marilyn joined in. And suffice to say, she's developed a bit of a fan club, which we could always talk about later. So moving on to the second guest, a gentleman who I've met professionally, and he's done business with me and done so in a very, very supportive spirit. And that's Tony. Tony, you want to introduce yourself? Unmute and introduce. Oh, sorry, it's two Tonys. So not Tony Cox.
Okay, I was like, who's he talking about? Hi, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tony Biola Dada, and like Marilyn, I wear a number of hats. But in simple terms, for the last 30 or so years, I have been an investor in people, particularly those whose society has deemed as disadvantaged or marginalized, whether they be young people, women, or people of color. And over those 30 years, it's been an amazing journey, helping, supporting, and investing in people and transforming lives. So some of the people I've been blessed to work with have gone on to defy the odds and become very successful. Some have become multimillionaires and some have become household names. What I'm really passionate about is empowering people. See, I have a belief. I was blessed to meet someone who became and is still my spiritual mentor, and that was some 37 years ago. And some of the things that I learned from someone who was not from the West, from Africa, a so-called third world country, yet the things that he showed and has taught me has literally transformed my life and enabled me to be of service to life, doing the same thing for people. So hopefully we will be able to pick that. But my thing for this year, and we launched it earlier on this year, is about mind reset. So like Marilyn, I'm really keen for us to understand that the mind is the gift that God has given us. And when we know how to use it, we can use it to transform our lives. So thank you so much, Tony, for the invitation today.
Okay, that's very, very welcome. If you've not been into one of Tony's sessions, I've only had the privilege of seeing him do what he does once at a conference. But if you've not had the privilege, I do advise that you surely think very strongly about investing in yourself. And that's what it is, a self-investment. And I guess it's the same for Marilyn as well. It's about investing in yourself, you know. We spend a lot of time talking about financial investments and the benefits of those. But it has been my experience that irrespective of the financial investments you can make, which are great, and I would never advise you not to, if you're not also investing in yourself, you're kind of burning the candle at the wrong end. You need to make sure that you have a personal investment in yourself, in developing yourself and getting the best of who you are. And that will therefore follow on to anything else you want to do. But that's my big talk for the day. Yeah. Today, by the way, I'm freelancing. So the patois, yeah, if you're not, I see Marie, who's from Jamaica. She's in Old Harbour in Jamaica. I need to talk to you, by the way, about something else, a project I'm doing. But my third and final guest on the panel today is Mr. Tony Cox. Tony, unmute yourself and tell us about who you are.
Well, first and foremost, thank you very much, Paul, for inviting me. I feel absolutely honored to be amongst this. Stop
it.
I mean, what can I say? I met Paul through a mutual organization of 100 Black Men of London, but we've been present in our journeys in various different ways. My job primarily is as an educator, working as a mentor with the 100 and also as a learning advisor with a number of schools in Surrey. But I also run a clothing business, my own tailoring menswear business, and I'm also a commentator on boxing, which is why you'll see at the sort of tail end of my name, it says AKA the Pugilist Boy. For those of you who don't know, pugilism is the technical word for boxing. But yeah, I must admit, Tony, with your fedora, I do feel underdressed. But yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me, guys.
Yeah, look, it's always great to bring people together like this. And you know, we talk a lot as a community about the fact that we need to talk more and we need to communicate more. You know, talking is easy, communicating not so much. And so it's not your privilege, it's absolutely my privilege to have people who are willing to come on and talk and share from their experiences. That is ultimately what I think People Talk has always been about. For those who don't know, I started People Talk the week after lockdown started back in March. Wow, that seems like ages ago. I've done a show every single Sunday, even sometimes when I've cheated and I broadcast pre-recorded shows, which, you know, just gives me a little bit of chance to have a life. I know Marilyn knows what that's about not having a life. So yeah, it's great to have you guys on. And the mission I gave you guys before we started was for you to come to the table with 2 or 3 topics that we could bounce around and we could have a chat about. And unashamedly, I'm going to go with Marilyn's first topic first, because when I said to her, what's the topic you want to talk about? She went straight. I won't even tell you what she went straight to, because I'm hoping she'll remember the first topic she mentioned. And Marilyn, let's get talking about that one.
So the first topic I went to, and ironically, it is also about the power of not talking, and I'll explain what I mean. So of course I had to come to Chadwick Boseman, because I was just walking down.
Call the man by his proper name.
T'Challa.
There you go.
You know, So I was walking downstairs. I was just about to MC an event that was broadcasting around the world to like 27 countries. I flick on my iPad just to see if anyone had sent any last minute changes overnight, because we had like 20 odd speakers. And I see the headline said Chadwick Boseman died aged 43. And my brain went, oh, I didn't know I knew another Chadwick, because it couldn't be Chadwick Boseman. And there was no picture. So I click on the picture, and of course we all know the news. But one of the things that stunned me, as well as the news, was the realization that actually you can keep secrets in Hollywood, because that is an industry that is renowned for gossip. And and I don't think it's just about Hollywood. That shows me the character of Chadwick Boseman as well. He had created a circle of people around him who had enough respect for him to create a circle of trust, because that is a big issue. If you're going through chemo and surgery, there are nurses, doctors, surgeons, anesthetists, registrars, receptionists, people in the car park as you arrive and as you leave. I am astounded that he had created such an incredible circle of people around him that we, the nosy world, had no idea. And it's none of our business to be in his business and know what he's going through. But in this world where there's always a story where someone close to the subject, someone close to them said, there's always a little leakage. And I'm like, what kind of man must he have been to have been able to surround himself with people who respected him so deeply that they didn't say a word?
I think it's an absolute, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it's very much a testament to the type of man he must have been, because, you know, the people you have around you are indicative of who you are. Yep. And for them to hold that and to think about the amount of movies he did during that time. Yep. If you do the chart back as to the 4 years of his bout with cancer, and you look at the films he produced, and again, the number of people, and a lot of them knew. A lot of the guys, especially from the Avengers series, they knew. Yeah. And they were always in admiration of the fact that they had to design schedules around his treatments. So they knew. There was no doubt there. But you're right, they kept it confidential. Tony, I'm going to call you guys Tony C and Tony D. Yeah, so I don't get this confused. What was your views around the Black Panther? As certainly that's how I really know him, and I'll always remember him. Tony C, there you go.
Yeah, I mean, like Marilyn, I was also extremely shocked at the headline, and then further, even more shocked that, you know, this had been kept secret. You know, the whole character of the Black Panther, King T'Challa, is one that I had read up as a comic book here, sort of fan for years, but to see it brought to life in the way it had been, and I'm not going to deny it, I've always been a fan of Black superheroes. I mean, before the Black Panther, my biggest hero was Wesley Snipes as Blade. And so that representation of the Black superhero has been, for me, so monumental. And, you know, I can only say that, you know, it was such an amazing production to bring that character to life. The imagery, you know, the influence that brought to us as a community is so great that, you know, it feels like part of us as a community has almost lost a part of our soul. Although, you know, as an adult, you kind of look and say, well, it would be like losing a very close loved one, and you find a way in which to replace that love via maybe some other part of the family. But yeah, this has been, you know, a very monumental time in terms of losing some of our greatest icons in society. It's been an absolutely weird sort of couple of weeks, because not only did we lose Chadwick Boseman, but we lost a few other names in the Black community as well. I also go back to a few months back when we lost Kobe Bryant, who the two characters almost became kind of like yin and yang for me, because Kobe Bryant was known as the Black Mamba, and his whole mentality and approach to life was called Mamba mentality, and something again that I use like as a coaching mechanism to teach people about the importance of you know, positive mental thought. But yeah, you know, it's been such an amazing loss that, you know, I can only say it takes a big person with big boots to kind of fill in and take up the mantle where we've lost that particular part of our community.
Yeah, it's a funny thing because I grew up learning to read through comics. So both me and my brother, we had comics on tap, and that's how we learned to read. So we both went to school fully able to read because of comics, albeit it was DC, it wasn't Marvel back in those days. But when they brought the Marvel comics to life and the rumors started to filter through that they were gonna go for the Black Panther as a standalone movie, as a, well, I'm not a young guy anymore, but as a man who grew up on those things, the whole mystique, the whole attitude of a powerful standalone king, leader of his country, you know, a technologically advanced, I'm a techie, I'm a geek, so I love all of that. For me, it was like unbelievable. And I think if you watch the movies, which I'm sure everybody here has, one of the key aspects about the movie is about transition. It's about moving on. It's about passing the mantle from one to the other. So right now, I'm just in a mode where, yeah, you know, you can't help but be sad that, you know, Chadwick has passed on. But then we start thinking about where the mantle goes on, both in terms of the films themselves, but also in terms of the gap that someone like him will have left in our communities. And, you know, it's important, this imagery of this strong, regal, you know, the images that I have about that meeting when they were all in the throne room, and, you know, the young pretender, you know, who we love as well. Yeah, that whole meeting, very inspiring. Tony D, what's your thoughts on this?
Well, like you, I was deeply touched, but on reflection, there was two poignant things that came out for me that are really a lasting impression. And one was looking at Chad and seeing the impact that he had on millions of people. And it got me thinking about purpose. In terms of, I truly believe that each of us have a purpose, a divine purpose. And our job is to discover what that purpose is and live it. And when we live from that place and we're living a purposeful life, it has impact on others, and it makes a difference in the world. And I believe that we're living in a new time, and this is really what my message has been about throughout the year. As a conscious creative entrepreneur, I believe that the time that we're living in is a time where we are to wake up to our conscious awareness and identity of who we really are and live from that place. So that was the first thing, and that I had great respect and admiration for someone who in such a short space of time had made such a difference and such an impact. And I truly believe that when you're living from that place of conscious awareness and living purposefully, you can do so much in such a short space of time. So that was the first thing in terms of purpose. And then I thought deeper and meditated on it, and it brought me to Denzel Washington. You see, here is a man of vision. And correct me if I'm wrong, but as I understand it, if this man of vision didn't make an investment into the scholarship of this young Chad, then he wouldn't have then gone on to be the person that we now know him to be. And this is my big thing, and has been my big thing for 30 years, in as much as that I truly believe that statement in the good book that says, through lack of vision, a people perish. You see, when we get to a point where we understand what that really means, meaning, and this is what our program teaches, like, do you have a vision for your life? But even more so than that, do you have a vision for your community and the role that you play with it? Do you have a vision for your mental and emotional life? Do you have a vision for your spiritual life? Do you have a vision for your relationships? Do you have a vision for your business? Do you have a vision for your money and what you're doing? When you begin to ask yourselves those questions, then your life can take on a completely transformational space. And I believe that that's the story that really I want to communicate and want to impress upon our listeners today. Those two words. Do you have a clear vision for your life? And if not, then it should be your number one priority, because, ladies and gentlemen, I believe, if we haven't seen it already, it is clear that we are living in new times. And I believe that those times are new times, whereby if you don't have a vision, then you're going to find things very difficult. And then purpose.
Absolutely, absolutely right. You know, a gentleman, and I know he won't mind me saying his name, Lee Jasper. Lee's a good friend of mine. I know Lee can be a bit of a Marmite character, but one of the things that Lee said to me a couple of years ago, he said, Paul, look, I've done as much as I can do. So my plan now is about legacy.
Absolutely.
Yeah? And if you're not thinking about legacy, if you're not thinking about what you're leaving, if you're not thinking about the seeds you're planting and what comes next, then, you know, why are you here? You know, you're a man, you're a woman of a certain age and a certain experience. It's got to start to be about legacy. And I think that takes us quite nicely to one of the topics I know Tony C wanted to talk about. And this was around, what is our expectation from people like Chadwick, from people like Denzel, about speaking out on politics, on rights? You know, do we listen to them? Should we be listening to them? Should they be speaking out? Should our great and our good be dipping their feet in? You know, we've got, in November, we have the US election coming up. Yep. We've had our election of you know, the current prime minister. I can't even bring myself to say his name. No, I'm not biased. I just can't bring myself to say his name in the same frame as leader. But the reality is that should our great and good, should our stars, our celebrities, whether they're sports, whether they're whatever, should they be speaking on these topics? And should we listen? Marilyn, what do you think?
I actually think that is, what am I going to say? The way I'm going to put it, citizens of the world, you know, regardless of your job and what you do and et cetera, I think everyone has a right to share their thoughts, their opinions, etc. Now, these people are influencers. They have a group of people that listen to them, that follow them. And so where we are now in what I'd say quite precarious times in terms of the world of politics, if those people aren't speaking out, then I think there's a missed opportunity in those who look up to them and respect them and listen to what they say. So I don't think just because you are in a particular job, it should take your voice away. Now, don't be pretending, if you haven't studied politics and economics and et cetera, to be advising in very specific ways. I think that's a different conversation. But to be able to share your views and what you think and what you feel and what you believe, I don't think that your job should necessarily take that right away from you, because then that means that all of the Twitter trolls, they shouldn't be able to speak either, because surely most of them have got jobs. So I don't have a problem with them speaking out. And I also understand why some of them don't, because it's a precarious industry. And I'll just use the term blackballed. It's very easy. People like Eartha Kitt, etc., they lived through all of that. They knew what it meant to be exiled from the community. And you have to also appreciate they've got to make a living. And so I do also understand why some people don't speak out, because they don't want to rock the boat and they don't necessarily want to bite the hand that feeds them. But should your job mean that you can't have an opinion? I don't think so.
See, it's a double-edged sword. And Tony, I'm going to ask you why you raise that as a topic. It's a double-edged sword, because if we look at people like John Boyega, who spoke out very, very clearly in and around Black Lives Matter after the death of George Floyd, and there was a lot of blowback. But there was a different type of blowback when the boxer, I can't remember his name, funny enough, just walked out of my head.
Anthony Joshua.
Anthony Joshua. Well, so when Anthony spoke out, they went straight for his sponsors. Yep. John Boyega, not so much, but they went straight for Anthony's sponsorship, and they made direct and straight claims. So that's one side of it. Yeah, you know, those you're speaking out against, they commit. But also, and it has to be said, as a community, if the person speaks out, doesn't say exactly what we want them to say, we can be harsh as well. You know, and a lot of people I know who might or should have a voice, they tell me, you know, Paul, look, I'm not putting my head above the parapet. You know, I'm just making my living for me and my kids, and, you know, I'm trying to get along. So Tony C, what was the motivation behind that question? What was it you're trying to explore?
So essentially, it was a conversation that was had amongst a number of my peers. We were talking about cancel culture. We were talking about there was a conversation in relation to some comments that, interestingly, a white person, Gary Lineker, had made in relation to Black Lives Matter and the uprising of what we call wokenness. And the fact that, you know, people are actually beginning to have honest conversations around race. And my point has been that, you know, my hero as a boxing fan and as a human being has always been, my greatest hero is Muhammad Ali. And then somebody chimed in, well, Muhammad Ali would have been so much better if he'd have not done what he'd done and just continued his boxing career. Imagine if those 3 years which he had his whole career taken away from him hadn't happened, the kind of boxer he would have been. But let's be honest, if he hadn't done what he had done, we wouldn't be talking to him today about one of the greatest human beings of all time. The man gave up his career for his people, you know. Another person in that fold is obviously the great Colin Kaepernick, a man who was willing to sacrifice his entire career as a multi-million-pound sports athlete in the American Football League to stand up and make comment about injustice against Black people by police. This man lost his career. Of course, now he's been made, you know, a lot of people have made a lot of, you know, comment about, you know, whether he should have done that or whether he shouldn't have done that. But essentially, you know, we shouldn't be writing these people off when they want to make some kind of comment. And then we move on to more recent times. And as you said, John Boyega came out recently. So did Anthony Joshua. We heard recently Wiley was heavily
Wiley was lynched.
Literally lynched.
Let's just be straight. Wiley was lynched.
Yeah. And the other person that gets it hugely from the Black community is John Barnes. You know, he has a lot to say. And you know, he comes out and he says what he has to say. And for some reason, he's lynched. Because, you know, what are you saying about Black people and the struggles? You were a footballer and you had all these opportunities, but now all of a sudden you want to jump on the bandwagon. Well, you know, at the time when he was a successful footballer, he didn't feel he wanted to use his voice. But now he's come out of the playing career, he suddenly is able to use his voice, and he wants to say something. Why should he not be allowed to say something? You know, listen, I don't think this whole conversation is about whether you're saying the right thing or the wrong thing. It's about just being allowed to say something. And just because you know, your view doesn't attune with somebody else's view, shouldn't mean you should be written off. You know, I'll tell people all the time, I think Barack Obama was a great orator. Was he a great citizen for Black people? Was he a great, you know, person of change for the Black community in America? I'd say very, very much no. You know, I just look at his city of residence. You know, the city of Chicago, where Barack Obama lives, where interestingly Oprah Winfrey also lives, where interestingly Louis Farrakhan also lives in the city of Chicago. It's one of the worst places in the whole of America for Black people. So sometimes you just have to be very careful about cancel culture, about what people are saying as opposed to what they look like they're saying. You know, I'm sure Tony D is going to have a lot to say on this, you know, because this legacy thing is a big thing for me.
But you know,
Yeah.
Tony D, I wanna ask, isn't some of this about people sort of pigeonholing people, especially our Black stars? So when Colin Kaepernick did his protest, people said, "Shut up! You're a footballer. Run with the ball. That's what you're supposed to." I think one of Trump's aides said, "You know, all you're supposed to do is dribble." Yeah, or was that about one of the basketball players? All you're supposed to do. Yeah, it was about LeBron James, actually. When LeBron made a statement, the lady said, all you're supposed to do is dribble. Isn't it that pigeonholing of our stars? So that's why people weren't comfortable with Muhammad Ali's stance. Just stand up and fight and get knocked down. Colin Kaepernick, carry the ball. Just do this. Just do that. And they're not allowing our people to really do that wider citizen role that Tony was talking about, being a citizen of the world.
Well, let's just use the Muhammad Ali example. He made a decision based on who he knew himself to be. And I don't recall him asking permission from anyone to express who he is. You see, my view is slightly different. Well, somewhat different, in that when I say that the world has changed, I don't think people really understand in what way the world has changed. In that, if my hunch is right, that we have moved into this new time of spirituality, and Tony talked about wokeness. What is wokeness? Being awoke is being awoke to who you really are. Meaning, if you are awoke, that means you were formerly asleep. And so what is it that you have woken up to? And I believe that in this time, we are all, those of us who are waking up, we are waking up to who we truly are, spiritually, and what we are here to do, which is to express our nature. I'm gonna let you into a little secret. I was blessed in 2016 to have an interview with this lady by the name of Sophia Stewart. I don't know if you're familiar with the name. She's the sister who was attributed to the creation of the movie The Matrix. And
oh yes, I remember the name now.
And so we had an interview, and I still have this interview, and I'll share it with our members. What we are experiencing today, she pretty much predicted in 2016. She spoke about Donald Trump being an omen, a sign of this spiritual time that we're now living in. And she said something that I will share with the listeners. She said, people who are wanting to live life through the old paradigm, which is just to take, i.e. to be takers and not make a contribution, life will take you out. And I didn't understand what she meant at the time, but today, and in the year of 2020, I see what's been going on in the world, and I've seen how things have unfolded from 2016 to now. I see, and I'm now understanding what she's saying. So my thing is, I don't believe that we need to seek permission to express who we are. I think it's our God-given right, and it is our duty for us to express who we are, because otherwise, well, in many respects, if you are living and saying, well, I don't want to speak out because I don't want to stop receiving my paycheck, well, then someone owns you. People may not be in agreement with that, but that's my view. And that's how I've lived my life. I did not want to be owned by anyone. I made the conscious decision that I want to be able to express who I am. And sometimes that doesn't meet people's It doesn't fit with what people want or expect of you. But that's them. I can't speak for them. All I can do is speak for me, what I believe and what I know to be true. And so it's really about conscious awareness. It's really about, in this time as a community, are we going to represent ourselves and stand for something? Because if you don't stand for anything, then
Yep.
if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And I'm not trying to be taken out like that. And so that speaks to the legacy, in the sense that where our young people are concerned, where those who are coming behind us, or who are coming up, they want to see us stand for something, that our values, our words, our deeds, and our actions, there is a consistency in them. And I believe that that's the best way that we can make a difference and influence our communities. Sorry, I've gone off a little bit, but you can tell.
No. You know what, Tony? No need to apologize, because actually, when you talk about what our young people are looking forward to, that's part and parcel why I am a member of the 100 Black Men of London. I know Tony C very much. It's all on the same sort of channel, and I actually want to stick with you a little bit, because one of the things that when we talk about legacy, yeah, obviously sometimes we talk about it in a very material sense, but I'd like to drill down a little bit more about you and the work you do, and your topic. One of the topics that you wanted to talk about, which I won't mention. You can bring it out. But isn't this legacy that we're trying to pass on something that we need to be demonstrating? And so we don't have to depend upon the Chadwick Bosemans. We don't have to depend upon the Obamas. But in our own little way, in our own little communities, in the little work that we do, I've always said that one of my proudest moments in my life was when I completed my master's, and my son said to me, "Dad, you've always been an inspiration to me." And I never thought of me doing the master's as something that was for him, but I saw the difference it made. So tell me about, when you're talking about this legacy, you're talking about it. Go a little bit deeper. Feel free to go deep. My show. They can't turn us off the air.
Okay. Yet. Well, first of all, I want to just take your example to demonstrate my point. When you decided to do your master's, you were not thinking about anyone else other than fulfilling your inner desire. And then later on, you find out that other people are inspired or motivated by what you've done. That is exactly how we're supposed to be living in our community. For 30 odd years, I've been saying, I truly believe that conscious awareness is what is required, meaning, who are you? What do you stand for? And what is your reason and purpose for being here? I've been blessed that, as I said, I met my spiritual mentor 37 years ago. And around 30 years ago, I came to the awareness that my life, regardless of what other people may have to say, is I am an investor in people, and I look for and will always move quickly towards opportunities that will allow me to invest in people. And so because I came to that awareness without any money or resources other than a vision, as we said earlier on, I was able to set up a not-for-profit organization that went on to invest in almost £2 million into individuals up and down the country. So I'm saying that not to brag or to boast, but to prove that this is not a theory. This is something I've lived and proven for myself, and therefore now teach and show others how to do the same. Find your purpose. This is a time where we as individuals are being called by life itself to say, what are you here for? As young people say, if you're not doing anything, you're a waste man off the planet. What are you here for? What is your contribution? So even the whole idea of legacy, it's not for me to say, I want to give it and leave a legacy. No, but I want to express who and what I believe to be true and my core values and belief systems, and then share it with those who also have a similar view, and empower them, to encourage them, so that now we have a community of about 50 to about 70 individuals who share this view. Now we are a force of nature making a difference, and we can draw on so many different stories. So my point being, if we're focusing on just materialism, it ain't gonna work, because we're more than that. You'll acquire all the things that you think, and then it won't be enough. And I used to say to people that money is the last thing that we need. And people will be like, well, you've got to pay your bills, you've got to do this, you've got to do that. Yes, I get that. But you know what I love? About 3 years ago, I got a golden opportunity to prove my point. I have a business coach now who I didn't go looking for him. He sought me. And he is a billionaire, meaning he's acquired everything that many of us would acquire. But there's still a gap. And what he's now doing is investing all of his time, effort, and energy and resources in empowering other people. So my point is, we don't have to do that. We don't have to spend most of our lives trying to acquire all these things. The journey that we require is an inward one, to understand who are you, what is your contribution and your purpose, and then prove it by expressing it. So I hope I've addressed it.
Yeah, you know, it sort of brings me back to my opening comment about developing yourself. And so I think it's time to bring Marilyn in, because Marilyn, tell us a little bit about your practice, about what it is you do, and, you know, staying on this conversation about developing yourself, so almost to incidentally create this legacy, yep, to define who you are, to understand your purpose, and through doing that, to automatically be leaving your legacy.
Well, it's an interesting one. A couple of days ago, I shared a post saying on this day 20 years ago, and pretty much right this moment 20 years ago, I was suicidal, hadn't quite tipped over the edge yet, but a couple of days from now, 20 years ago, I actually sat and contemplated suicide, and I literally worked out the ways that I might be able to do it. I was also clearly depressed. I had also been diagnosed many years before in my early 20s with what was thought to be early onset Alzheimer's. And I was studying to be a chartered accountant, not because it's what I truly wanted to do, as Tony D has been talking about, but because I thought it would give me gravitas if I could then say I'm a chartered accountant. So when all of these things compounded, and the tipping point was finding out my then partner had had an affair, which I know when I say it out loud, people go, well, you're going to kill yourself because somebody had an affair. But at the time, it felt like the end of the world, you know, where everything had imploded. And just before all of this hit the fan, I had accidentally signed up for a personal development training. I thought I'd signed up for communication skills because I was also very quiet and very shy, lacking in confidence.
We can't imagine you on that level. Sorry, you're gonna have to take that back.
People always say that. Look, my sister now when I tell this story, if she's ever around, I go, yeah, I used to be scared to even speak to my own family. And my sister mumbled at one Christmas, she's like, yeah, now we can't shut her up. She ain't stopped talking since. You know, so, you know, that was the place where this started. And tried to get a refund when I realized I'd signed up for some weird stuff, really, you know, NLP, hypnosis, timeline therapy, HUNA. I'm like, no, I've got a business studies degree, a postgraduate diploma with the Chartered Institute of Marketing. I'm studying to be a chartered accountant. I don't think so. You cannot tell me that somebody talking is going to help me change my life in any way, shape or form. But they actually wouldn't give me a refund. They said, come to the training. If you don't get massive value, blah, 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 you'll get a refund at the end. Now we're talking several £1,000s. And the plan was that my partner was working and supporting me while I studied. When I qualified as an accountant, he was going to retire for a few years and do his pilot's license. So now I find myself separated, single, no money, no job. And so I tried to get the refund for that reason, but also because it was just like out of my comfort zone. But I'm so pleased. I am so pleased that they didn't give me a refund and that I was dragged through that training, because like Tony D was saying, I felt like I'd come home. It was probably 3.5 days in when I thought, hold on a minute, if I don't play full out like they keep saying, they're going to use it as a loophole to not give me my refund. So I'm going to jump in with both feet. I'm going to prove that it doesn't work and that this is all nonsense and nobody can question my refund request. Well, of course, when I let go and thought I've got nothing to lose here because I'm already broken, I've just been contemplating suicide, I very swiftly came up the other side on the 5th or 6th day, completely transformed. And that's why then my banner has always been transformations, because I'm like, I was still Marilyn, but I was the version of Marilyn that I always dreamt of being, because prior to that, I would say I would like, oh, I was on the outside looking in. I was watching other people living their life, having a good time, socializing, having friends, doing what they wanted to do, speaking up, speaking out. And I was like the wallflower for the first 32 years of my life. And it was like, oh my gosh. And somebody had said to me, I can't imagine you being an accountant. And I got angry when she first said it, because this was in the first couple of days. By the 7th day, I was like, I can't imagine that either.
Wow.
Yeah. So, see, this is you know, I'm looking at some of the comments down in Facebook land about what's been said, but this is exactly what I like when I have conversations, because, you know, Sherry Dixon, Sherry's all the way in Guyana, and Sherry has just said, Marilyn, shy, big exclamation marks. The point is, the product that people tend to see, they don't always know how we got there. And this is what we're talking about when we're talking about role modeling, we're talking about legacy, is that if someone who looks like us, who talks like us, who's from the same background like us, can demonstrate that transformation is possible, then it becomes more possible for somebody else who's listening. So what I'm hoping is that there are people who are listening today, and hopefully they're not in as dark a place as you were 20 years ago, but they may be in a similarly dark place, where what you're now saying is making a huge difference for them, because what they're seeing is, this is what's on the other side. This is what awaits. This is what's available. But again, I'm going to harp on it. You have to be invested in yourself. And sometimes that investment is accidental, as in your case, but sometimes it's purposeful. And if we can achieve anything from these shows, you know, I'm not doing these shows because I got nothing to do with better on a Sunday. Yeah. I decided that I'm going to do these shows because I have a lot to say, and I have a lot of people who also have a lot to say. And so let's get it said and let's get it out there. So for anybody listening, please, please, please. Yeah, I know it's really nice and inspiring to hear what Marilyn has said, but turn it in on yourself. Turn it in on yourself. Look and see what development you can do. Yeah. You're not the finished article until you're finished. Yeah.
May I just add something to that?
Of course, sir.
It's interesting that Marilyn said what she said happened to her 20 years ago. I remember having a conversation with my spiritual mentor about 20 years ago. And in that conversation, he was saying to me, and I'll share it, he was talking about this new time that we were going to be living in, where it was going to be the rise of the feminine energy. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And the feminine energy, for those of you who are not aware, it's that holistic energy in terms of, and I'll compare it to how we used to live, was very linear, very, you know, me, myself, everything, it's all about me. Whereas a feminine energy, you just think of a mother, it's always about inclusion, it's about being aware of everything. And so Marilyn, you just kind of jogged my memory when you talked about that, because now that I've looked back at the last 20 years, I see that if you look at the world, it is very different. We are seeing that feminine energy. And interestingly enough, 85% of the people that I work with are females. And so I put that into context from a spiritual point of view, that Mother Nature, the creator, call it what you will, has recognized that masculine energy on its own, guys just doing things. And when I say feminine energy, I mean that energy exists in both men and women. So don't get it twisted. But this is a new time where it is the rise of that feminine energy, which is thinking about others, thinking about giving as well as receiving, thinking holistically, not winners take all. And unless we as individuals move out of that old paradigm into this new paradigm and operate differently, then we're dead and we don't even know it, because everything looks the same, but nothing is the same. So I just wanted to add that because you jogged my memory, Marilyn.
Look, guys, this is great. I just peeked at the time and I can't believe what the time is. And I got to say this before I go. So next week's show, and we're not ready to go yet. Don't panic. Next week's show, I'm delving into a topic which I've not heard a man do for my entire life. So next week, we're going to be talking about menopause. Yep. Yes, Tony C, I can see you, just in case you don't think I can see you. I can see your eyes. We're talking about menopause. And very, very specifically, we're going to be talking next week about female menopause, because I understand there's a male menopause, and what every man should know. Yep. Now, when I spoke to one of the ladies who's going to be on the show, one of the things she said to me very early was that, Paul, one of the reasons why a lot of men don't know that much about menopause is because a lot of ladies don't know that much about menopause. And so the show next week is going to be all about menopause, and I'm hoping that people will go away informed, both women and men, because, you know, either way, it's something that can affect you and affect relationships. So that's what we're going to be talking about next week. But Tony, one of the other topics that you did, I'm talking about Tony C now, that you did want to talk about, you did want to mention, was about mental health and about, you know, our young kids going back into school. It's that time now, and they're talking about back to school. What was the angle you were looking to come from, Tony?
So, obviously, going back to school this week has raised a lot of subject conversation in a number of groups that I'm working with. We've had a meeting this week with the 100 Black Men talking about how we're going to return back to working with our students, or as we call them, diamonds, whether that would be in face-to-face or whether we would continue with our online platform that we've run through the summer. I'm also a parent. I've got 3 kids, but my youngest is just returned to junior school. And I was able to take him into school and pick him up from school and see the dynamic of what was going on around the pickup and drop off. And you know, it's just one of those situations where me, as a person who works in that field of education, is very much aware that, you know, look, the kids have gone through one of the most difficult times in their entire life, I'm sure, in terms of dealing with the issues that lockdown and COVID has brought about. You know, we've seen continual stories about death. Some of them will have experienced that themselves, and those experiences will come under very difficult circumstances when you've not been able to, you know, go see a family member, go see an uncle, an auntie, a grandmother or a grandfather. We've also had, during that time, this huge focus, because of our state of lockdown, in seeing the abhorrence of violence that's been taking place around the globe, mostly, of course, coming from America, but it has been taking place elsewhere. But that also has a very big dynamic to play in terms of the psychology of both adults and children, because, you know, we as the adults are seeing lots of violence, and indirectly that then goes down to our children. So, you know, it's been a very difficult time for me as a Black man to be seeing the murder of George Floyd, and then the murder of Ahmaud Arbery, and then the murder of Breonna Taylor, and then the murder of, and it goes on and on and on. And my mind is obviously affected by that continual trauma. And I'm fully aware that whatever is going on in my mind psychologically is going to have an impact on my children. And you know, it's interesting, Tony Dada, that you're talking about legacy. You know, my legacy is immediately my children, and further on, the children in my community. So those who I choose to involve myself in, and I choose to do that with a very large number of children, whether that be in mainstream education where I work, or whether be in my closer community with the 100 Black Men. So mental health is not only something that's very important for us as adults, but it's been something that is very important for the children. And through the summer, I've engaged with a number of children, and we've had very good conversation in relation to, you know, how they look at things like the Black Lives Matters movement, how that impacts them, how they get themselves involved in that kind of movement. And there's clearly a need to be very careful about how we approach mental health with our children. You know, the whole homeschooling system, you know, very many parents have found it difficult through the summer to homeschool, you know, which has meant, you know, a lot of the time the children are directly engaged with their parents, and they've had to create a dynamic which is workable so that they can do their job and educate their child, or keep their child motivated and their mind, you know, at least doing something, so that they come out at the end of it where they're not completely, you know, in a state of shock with what they've had to deal with. So
I think Tony, there's a lot there, because
yeah,
when we think about, you know, the whole homeschooling thing, you know, my youngest and my only is 25, so I've not really been affected by this. But one of the things that I've been thinking about, and I'm going to come to Tony D, because I know he wanted to talk about mental health as one of his topics. One of the things that I've been thinking about is, you know, you don't know what you don't know. And so we were happily going along thinking that, well, everybody has internet, everybody has broadband, everybody has a laptop. So when this lockdown happened, and we're still talking about homeschooling our kids, we're sort of forgetting that there's a section of our society, our community, people who we see probably every day, who didn't have broadband. Their kids didn't have an iPad. They didn't have a tablet. So even when we're talking about homeschooling, yeah, the way the government sort of rolled it out was, well, you just log on to the school, innit? And you do a Zoom and you're fine. That excluded a whole raft of the community. Yep. And I know that they had to set up funds for young people who didn't have laptops. But I'm going to hazard a guess that if you didn't have a laptop, you probably didn't have broadband either. Yeah. So when it comes to being left behind, a lot of our communities are being left behind. And even us, those of us who like to consider ourselves to have a better view of things, we're not even noticing that either. Because for us, I can't imagine a house without Wi-Fi. You know, if you invite me around to your house, when you say hello, you need to slip the Wi-Fi code in my pocket as well at the same time. That's a normal thing now. So our societies are fractured, sometimes in ways we don't even notice. And people are easily getting left behind. Tony D, we're almost upon the hour, but we do want to talk a little bit about the mental health aspect, not just of our young people who are exiting, but I think you had a specific focus on men. Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, men, but just, I really want to speak to those who are marginalized, you know, young people, men, and up until recently, and maybe still, you know, women. And I just really want to sum it up in this way. So at the beginning of this year, in February, we staged an event, 2 events actually, called Mind Reset. So without going into too much detail, from my spiritual meditation, we saw there was a madness coming. And so we put on these 2 events to alert our members and share that with them. And then of course, within 21 days, look what happened. Make no mistake, you're saying that people are going to get left behind. They are. What is required? We must engage in a mind reset. What does a mind reset mean? It means that you have to reevaluate everything that you've previously known. And if you don't do it consciously, then it will be done for you. Because look what's happening now. The amount of people that are suffering in fear and anxiety because they just cannot understand how the world has changed. So I'm saying my perspective is all that I know, which was work for me, that we need to change the game, change the narrative, and starting with our mind. The mind is the greatest gift that we've been given, and we don't know how to use it. If we can learn how to use our minds, and I'm not talking about going to school and learning in the traditional way, there's nothing wrong with that, but there's a whole different dimension of learning that we are being called to use, which will enable us to grow in ways that are exponential. And Marilyn is a living example of that with her story. It's not about the academic, it's about the mindset. And these are the events that I'm launching our program that I've spent about 30 years, and we put together a simple program that will allow any individual from 16 to 60 to begin to see who you really are. If you don't know who you really are, then you can't achieve your true potential. And I amount it like a beggar walking around with a check in his back pocket for £1 million that he doesn't know he's got. That's how many of us are living our lives. And all of this disruption is to force us to come to this awareness, to take responsibility for our lives, whether you're young, old, black or white. This is my summary of where we are.
Look, guys, we're past the hour. All I can say is I didn't know how today's conversation would turn out, but if I look at the comments on the Facebook feed, I think the conversation came out pretty damn good. Yeah, you know, I say this every single week, and I think this is a realization of the social capital that we actually have in our community. You know, a lot of times I think we're very hard on ourselves as a community about what we have and the great people we have. And I have been able every single week for the past 20, 21, 22 weeks, I've lost count now, to bring together 3, 4, 5 people at times, all of who have been able to come at things from different directions because we're all different people. You know, I think Obama was the best thing since sliced bread, but I let Tony C get away with that one. Yep. But we contribute positively to our communities. And I think it's essential that we start to accept and realize the social capital. I'm tired of going to personal development things and seeing only either white people or black women in the room.
Absolutely.
Yep. When I turn up at stuff, when I have my personal development stuff, because I do communications training for people who want to learn to public speak. No, Marilyn, you can't come on the course. Yep. When I do those courses, I'm talking to 99.9% women. Yep. So when we talk about our men getting left behind, men, we need to fix up because our ladies are spending their money not just on nails and hair. That's a myth. They're spending their money on developing themselves, not just academically, by the way. They're spending their money on developing themselves, on skills that are making them better people and allowing them to invest in the community different. So we as men, we need to fix up. Yeah. Because if not, we're going to be left behind. And we're going to continue to be left behind. And I'm tired of people saying, "Oh, you speak so well for a black man."
But how can black men be aided is the question, Paul.
How can we be aided? We can be aided.
Men who want to grow, how can they be aided? Because
we can be aided by, first of all, recognizing that there is something for us to learn. Yep. The first step in everything. You know, if you use that famous quote, when someone said, "Teach me," and he said, "No, you can't because your cup is full." We have to recognize that our cups are not full. Yep. We have to recognize that in every dialogue, in every conversation, doesn't matter with who, there is something that you can learn and you can gain. That's number one. The second thing is you need to understand and accept that there are people out there like Tony, like Marilyn, who have invested years in developing programs that work. Yeah. This is not the fly-by-night person who's trying to think on the side. Yeah. We're talking about people who have invested their lives in programs that work. And men, and I know I've been one for a long while now, we have a thing called ego. And I think our egos stop us from accepting where we fall short. And it certainly stops us from accepting help. Yeah. So you have to have that recognition that you need help. And then you have to be brave. Be the man you claim you are by asking for help and accepting it from all quarters. That's what we need to be doing. And brothers, if you have a friend who you know, and you know, within my social circle, this is how we used to operate. If you have a friend who is, and I'm going to use the words, I don't care, falling short in some way, demonstrating waste man qualities, as a friend, if you are his friend, you should be reaching out to him and saying, "Look, brethren, this not gonna work. Yeah, love you to death, but you have to step up." Yeah. If you can't say that to somebody who you consider your friend, then it's not a point. And I want to be clear. I'm not suggesting I'm there. I'm not suggesting I'm the done product. That's why I still want to have these conversations with people like Tony C Tony D, Marilyn, because I learn. Yeah. So I'm doing this show because this is like free personal development to me. Yeah. Unashamedly. Yeah. The amount that I've learned over the 20 odd weeks has just been incredible. I could not pay for the sort of knowledge that I've learned over the weeks. So, men, we just need to accept that we're not the finished product and we need to step up. And that's the only way, if I'm going to be blunt, we are going to be able to stand up in front of these women, these queens, and they see us as good enough.
Paul, if I may just have a
May,
quick plug. I work with a gentleman by the name of David Mullins with Father Figure. Yeah. And every Wednesday we started about, I think now we're at 20 weeks. We started, just at the start of the lockdown, a conversation with Black fathers. And I could not tell you how much I have learned every week just by spending 2 hours of my evening sitting down and listening to conversation with Black fathers and Black men. I know women do the same because I have a very similar conversation with women on a Tuesday evening, which is called the After Dark Show with Yvonne Michelle. But listen, if anybody wants to reach out to me and wants to join that group, feel free. You can contact me via Paul, but there are forums where men, we support one another. Black men, we support one another to help build each other up. And believe it or not, just by being involved in a conversation over a couple of hours every week of an evening after you come in from work and you put the kids to bed can be so cathartic and can be so knowledgeable, because we've got guys calling in from America, from the Caribbean, giving their viewpoints on different subjects. We touch everything, relationships, we talk about, you name it. There's not a subject we won't touch. And it's so great to see that when we put our minds together, that we're able to help build each other up.
And I think on that point, I have to remember this, Tony, all three of you, don't say contact them through Paul. Every week people say to me, make sure these guys put their contact details into the chat. Yeah, that's on Facebook. If you're not, some people don't use Facebook. If you don't, send it to me. I'll put it in Facebook. Tony D, you have a program that's starting soon. The only reason why I'm giving Tony D this big plug is because he uses a website called Just Tickets to promote his events. And guess who owns Just Tickets? Guess. I'm not going to say anything more. Tony, plug.
Okay, so we are running weekly events on a Friday called Mind Reset, because it's really about introducing, from a spiritual perspective, a conscious awareness that needs to go on as a process. And I don't have enough time to go into it, but when I was talking about the feminine and masculine energy, imagine if I was to explain to you that there's a feminine and masculine aspect to even your mind and how it operates, and we want to teach and show you how to use that. But at the end of the month, I'm also launching our Mind Reset 2.0. As I said, early in the year, February, we launched Mind Reset and people didn't get it. Hopefully people get it now, and I want to show and launch our Mind Reset 2.0, this program that will, and the feedback I'm getting from people who have used it over the last 7 years, is that it allows you to have an expanded awareness of who you really are, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, financially, in business, socially, and your relationships. So as a result of that, all of those areas of your life lift to another level. And so, yes, I'm using Just Tickets because it is a phenomenal platform. And I'm not just saying that. I'll be honest with you. The conversations that we've had, I've been like, Tony, how much is this? A week or a month? And he's like, no, this is how much I charge. And I'm like,
yeah, price increase coming soon.
Yeah, it needs to, because one of the other things that we do not appreciate in our community is value. We have a warped notion and understanding where value is concerned. And I said it to you, and I'll say it again openly. For the service that you give, it should be much more than that. We need to be able to see the true value in things. And then if we want to discount it, we can. Are you with me? Because then people know that this is the value, and I appreciate. So when I say I'm an investor in people, I let people know and say, look, go and check how much it costs on the open market. But I'm not going to charge you that because I'm an investor in people. So it's running every Friday. If you want to tune in and connect with me on Facebook, it's Tony Biola Dada. That's my Facebook name. And we do stream also. And if you'd like to just connect with me and send us an email, then you can email me at info@tonydada.com. And my Instagram is also at Tony Biola Dada. So as I said, I'll be launching this program, and we have special incentives for individuals. And because I'm coming from that place of working with people who have been marginalized or disaffected economically or socially, we have a special bursary scheme that we have for people who might be economically challenged. Because my thing is, with what's coming, ladies and gentlemen, in terms of the turbulence that we're about to see in the rest of 2020 and beyond, we need to do a mind reset to begin to empower ourselves so that we can embrace the storms ahead. Thank you so much, Paul, for giving me the platform to do this.
You called me Tony about 3 times, but it's all right. Marilyn, quickly tell us about what you've got coming up in the next few weeks / months.
Now, for me, what people are calling the new normal is my old normal, because I've been running online coaching, online training, and online therapy since 2005. So it's not just, I thought, oh, I better pivot, which is the word now that's going around. And I'd say from the conversation we've had, a few weeks ago, I ran a webinar, which was about how to heal ancestral trauma. So if anyone wants the link to that, it's free. I will put it into the thread in the Facebook page if people want that. In terms of what you're saying about catching up, if people are watching us here, then they will be able to also partake. I teach photo reading and accelerated learning. So, you know, how to read at 25,000 words a minute and photo read a book in 5 minutes and remember, retain what you've read. And I have an intro session to that. And I think it's perfect for people who have not been able to homeschool, because I've had children who go from failing and getting an unclassified within a week or two, they're getting A's and B's and C's. So, you know, it really does work. And there's a version of that is a free intro. So I'll also find the link for that later. If not today, I'll do it tomorrow. And I'll put the link in for that as well. And if anybody wants further information, my website, I'll say it and I'll spell it because it's an unusual spelling. It's transformationstm.com. www.trance, as in hypnotic transformations, F for Freddy, so FORMATIONS, TM as in trademark, so transformationstm.com. And my email is Marilyn, MARILYN, @transformationstm.com. And it's easy to find me on social media. It's /Marilyn Devonish, DEV for Victor, ONISH, except for Instagram, which is the Neuro Success Coach. So, but I'll find the links later and I'll put them into the thread on the Facebook page if anyone wants to take themselves through the trauma piece or look at the accelerated learning and do a bit of catch up before we really hit into September and the new term.
Thank you so much, Marilyn. Tony, any last words? Tony C, before I break us. And what's going to happen, guys, for those who don't know, I'm going to break us from the Facebook feed, and then anybody who wants to hang around afterwards on the Zoom, I put the Zoom into the feed, by the way. They're happy to join us and have a quick chat afterwards. Not too long today, but that's what happened. So Tony C, your last words, please.
Yeah, well, just really want to thank you, as I said, Paul, for inviting me on. It's great to just have conversation with people of a similar mindset that want to do stuff. You know, listen, there's a lot of people who watch on the sidelines who, you know, are a little bit wary about stepping up and actually getting involved in things. But, you know, hopefully, you know, during lockdown, we've seen some amazing things happen where people have, you know, decided, look, enough is enough. I need to step up and do something. The more of us that do that, the better. You know, many hands make light work, as they say. So just don't be afraid. Get in communication with people. You know, there are lots of experts coming on weekly with Paul. You know, I find it amazing listening to those experts, learning weekly and finding new opportunities. Take advantage while you can. You know, we can only do this together. It takes a nation to raise it takes a village to raise a child, sorry. So, you know, we need more villages
Well, Tony, if that be the case, I've been trying to reach out to you guys, if I just can jump in there, Paul, in terms of I want to connect with you guys in terms of being able to do something. So I'm making myself available. I'm saying, how do I do it?
Then we're on it, because I've been not really on a sabbatical from the 100, but I pulled back a little bit because I had a few bits and pieces to sort out over the last year. But just this week, I contacted the heads of each of the departments to say I'm back in full force. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but I'll be putting myself back forward. So let's have the conversation. I've never been far from the 100. I suspect it's kind of in my blood now. So yeah, that's a given. We can do something around that. Look, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of the live section of the show that goes out to Facebook. Thank you so much for joining us. You know, maintaining this every week is not easy, but it is made easier by the sort of people that I have, both in terms of the panel guests and the people who watch the show regularly. I could not have imagined that it would be where it is now, and I'm very, very pleased with it. But more importantly, you are very pleased with it, and that by far is the most important thing. As I said, next week we're definitely going into a conversation about menopause. I think it's very important. You know, when you're a gentleman of a certain age, you are going to be encountering women of a certain age, and I like to have full information when I go into situations. So maybe next week's show is all for me, but it should be a great show as well. We have 3 really good people who will be on it. So whatever you do, stay safe for another week. Continue to develop yourself. You know, reach out to myself or any of the people who've been on this call today, or anybody. You know, if you go onto People Talk YouTube channel, you'll see all the shows that we've done before, all recorded, all uploaded, all there. You know, the relationship one, the one about all sorts of business. I can see Pat Reed putting stuff in the feed, Claudine, his wife, putting stuff in the feed. They've all been on the show before, and they're all great supporters. And you know what I think is very important, because I have to give a big shout out to Eddie Nesta and to Sherry Ann Dixon. Sherry's down in Guyana, and Eddie's here in the UK, and we all do shows, but we all support each other's shows. Yeah, and I think it's really, really great that our community is maturing to the level where we're pushing out this sort of stuff, because all I can see is this was well needed. This is deserved. We needed this. So let's just keep it growing. And feel free to invite myself to anything that you're doing. I know I went to Horlicks and Hardo Bread the other night with Donna Murray Turner. You know, Donna is a force to be reckoned with down here in Croydon. And again, it was a wonderful vibe, talking about very much about how do we reshape our businesses and survive. So the conversation goes on next week, 2:00 UK time. Big shout out to a man like Errol. Errol used to be Jamaican. He give up being Jamaican and become English, and then he give up that, and now he lives in New York. The man confused. Yeah, but we love Errol today. So guys, thank you so much for today. And I look forward to speaking to you all next week.